Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity today to present to you from San Diego College of Continuing Education. We're really excited for this opportunity. What we're going to talk about a little bit today is the collaborative approach that we have taken on our campus. It's a little different because we have multiple disciplines or departments that come together to do this work. The Career and College Transitions team, which Clark Wilson will be talking about, and work-based learning that Deborah Roth and I will be talking about. We'll also be talking a little bit about how we talk about what work-based learning is, a definition, how we engage with the faculty, and then we'll be talking specifically about how job placement career services are supporting our students along their pathway to employment. We will also be sure to give you some really interesting information today about how our employment engagement is really just exploding with possibilities on the campus. And we'll end with some challenges and opportunities. So first, I'd like to do a quick overview of who we are. San Diego College of Continuing Education, we serve about 45,000 students. We're the largest provider of non-credit education in California. And we're perhaps one of the biggest in the nation. But when we talk about this, many colleges have a non-credit program embedded. Ours is not embedded. We are a standalone college. As you may know, there are 4 colleges. There's Mesa, Miramar City, and now San Diego College of Continuing Education. So this is really a large footprint that we have in the non-credit world. What we are really, our mission states is we're for trying to always provide the most accessible, equitable opportunities for our students to enter into their education and support them along their career training pathway. We have over 70 different career pathways, as well as our high school diploma equivalency program and our English as Second Language program, which also, I might say, is the largest in the state. It grew perhaps exponentially, amazingly. So we have over 40% of our program is ESL students. Our programs are spread over 7 campuses. And I say that because many campuses are so central, you can walk from one office to the next office. We have people that when they want to come to a meeting, they have to get in their car and drive. We have over 200 community locations. And on those multiple campuses, we have 6 career centers. And we serve these students with job developers, job placement coordinator, career counselors, and as I said, myself and Deborah Roth as work-based learning coordinators.
So our job placement team is housed within the Career and College Transitions Department at SDCCE. We are responsible for providing career services for programs at all 7 campuses and staffing the 6 career centers. Our team is led by our Dean of Career and College Transitions. I am the job placement coordinator and work with all career pathways across all the campuses. We have 3 job developers who oversee specific pathways, and we have 1 career counselor.
Thank you, Clark. The work-based learning team is, as I said, Deborah Roth and myself. We are co-coordinators, and Alex Berry is our program manager. Alex is in an executive level meeting today that he was pulled into. Otherwise, he, as well as Stephanie Lewis, would be here to support us. They are supporting us, as say, but being present. A quick definition. I want to say many of us have seen this slide from a non-credit point of focus. Here's where we can talk about what's a little bit different. While we do work very hard to bring information interviews, guest speakers, industry speakers, when we move into the next column, job shadowing, mentoring, this area we're just building on. And we're especially building on internships. There are some wonderful opportunities now that have actually opened for us because of the remote situation we're in. Previously, internships were a situation that because we're non-credit, we were not able to explore that with our students. I'd like to talk a little bit about how work-based learning reaches out and works with the faculty. As Caitlin had said when she was presenting, and it was a great presentation, she said we often guide the faculty, and that is true. We experience the same thing. Faculty are really busy. Faculty are experts in what they do. Faculty know how to do what they do, but when it comes to integrating this work-based learning, sometimes a little bit of guidance is really important, especially upfront. So that's where we are. We're creating that conversation in the classroom. I reach out to the faculty member and I offer them the opportunity to set up a speaker who either support something in their classroom or perhaps will expand on something that they'd like to be brought into the classroom. Once I do this, the process is the faculty will then indicate their interest. Again, I do a lot of the front end work. I do the process of identifying the speaker or the institution that we will be able to get that support from. Hopefully there will be a point when faculty will be perhaps doing that work, but right now I feel the best way to get it to happen is for me to do a lot of the front end work. Once I get a confirmation from the faculty, we create the event. It rolls with the faculty, but it's very important that I support the faculty, that I talk to the faculty about how this will be integrated into their classroom. The conversation is a little bit new to some faculty, that it's not a field trip to leave the room, it's an opportunity to integrate work-based learning into the room. After the session, I ask faculty to have a post session with me where we talk about what the challenges, recommendations, and opportunities are. In addition, we sometimes are able to get testimonials from the students to support the work going forward. Examples of this type of work are when I will talk to a faculty member, I'll ask them if they would like a speaker who might be able to do a company tour, a demonstration of a skill, talk about a career pathway, or specifically perhaps about health and safety or about employment outcomes. Recently, I was working with child development and they asked specifically for science in the classroom. In addition, they asked for how to set up a small business. So when I look for a presenter, I'm looking with that specific focus. I want to talk of a recent win. In this year, we had a speaker who came in and she spoke to our students. And what was really amazing was how well received she was. The students, as you can see in this quote, they were thrilled and they were totally interactive in their conversation. The instructor, who also is Deborah Roth, our co-presenter, has really just brought so much into the classroom by bringing this opportunity. And Deborah has brought this person back into her classroom because it's been so successful. And as she mentioned earlier, when we were before this call, Kelly has brought into the classroom an important quality, which is she is a person who didn't start as a project manager. She is a person who realized that this is where she wanted to go. And that's important for our students to be able to relate to the speaker. I'd like now to invite Deborah to talk a little bit about industry advisory boards.
Hey, everybody. How y'all hanging in there? Well, before I walk through this slide that looks a little bit busy, I wanted to give you a brief introduction about my role, because my focus as work-based learning coordinator is dedicated to the connection between industry advisory boards and work-based learning, because we see the, if you can go back, thank you. We see the untapped potential of how to engage with these IABs as industry partners. So simply put, we are out to shift the perception of the function of industry advisory boards at SDCCE from a task that is on our to-do list to becoming an integral part of a continuous feedback loop that influences how we engage industry about work-based learning opportunities. In fact, our leadership recognizes the importance of listening to and engaging our industry partners in this forum so much as part of the student journey that, as I understand it, my role as work-based learning coordinator focusing on industry advisory boards is the only one like it in the district. So this slide illustrates the high-level end-to-end Work-Based Learning Industry Advisory Board process. This process, as defined by Continuing Ed, reflects the best practices that were resulting from a district-wide initiative that started in November 2019, I believe. It focused on the recently released updates to the district's Industry Advisory Board handbook. Each box includes the high-level bullets that reflect specific tasks or activities for the strategic planning of these meetings from an end-to-end perspective. So this process includes, with the asterisks, where you can see the data collection points from kickoff. That means receiving the request for Industry Advisory Board coordinator support, to Work-Based Learning Industry Advisory Board coordinator involvement and attendance facilitation at the meetings, and how we engage our industry partners in between, before, during, and after. So our goal is to measure progress at each of these points as these phases, and we are actually establishing more formal mechanisms to collect the data. But really, the process and the data points that we are collecting via primarily Google Sheets is reflecting the shift about how our how we're engaging our industry partners through the Industry Advisory Board meetings. You can go to the next slide, please, Richard. So this slide is really more about how we're working to change the perception of the value of the Industry Advisory Boards and our desire to shift the focus across all the programs. For example, if you take a look at the bottom, the last bullet, in partnership with our programs, we've introduced labor insights, burning glass facts and data reporting, quantifiable way and a framework to pose questions to our industry partners during our Industry Advisory Board meetings about things like emerging skills and what they're looking for when they're hiring new employees. Or we're able to dive in deeper for skills like when we see teamwork and collaboration. You know, each industry may have a different way to define it. So we're able to drill into that level of detail. So this is qualitative data, but we're seeing how the introduction of these types of reports to help frame some of the discussions is making a difference. So the final point for this one is that we're also seeing that more programs are recruiting industry partners to actually be the chairs or co-chairs. Next slide, please. This is really very qualitative in nature. This is what we wanted to do, what I wanted to do with this slide is to illustrate how we're seeing the perception changes of my role as work-based learning coordinator focusing on industry advisory boards. I want you to know this isn't an exhaustive list of all the programs that have convened the meetings. More what I want you to see was since the fall of 2019, the instances where this role was asked to come in to help with the strategic planning or the actual tactical piece of it during the meetings and after. And my final point here before I turn it over to Clark is that this actually, in what we wanted to show you is how it reinforces the commitment from Continuing Ed's standpoint to strengthening our ties, using the industry advisory boards as a vehicle, and thus change the perception of the value of industry advisory boards. Next, I'm going to hand it over to Clark to talk about the student pathways and the career and college transitions.
Thank you, Deborah and Richard. Hopefully y'all be able to hear me. I've been having audio issues, so that's why I'm not having my camera on, and I'm hoping it will be stable. So this slide, it represents a high-level overview of how our process looks when it comes to how a student enters the pathway into career and college transitions for services. Students are referred to the career and college transition team in a variety of ways. Other than self-referral, referrals can come from either faculty or counselors. The first stop for students is the job developer that is assigned to their career pathway. This process allows for a centralized process starting with the job developer, who then conducts the initial assessment for the level of the student's needs. After assessing student needs, if the job developer finds that the student needs more in-depth job readiness support, the job developer will then refer the student to the job placement coordinator for these services. One important note is that the arrow between the job developers and the job placement case manager goes both ways because we work together in supporting our students. How students are identified for job placement services. There are 3 entry points in which students may enter career and college transitions for job readiness and employment services. Those 3 ways are self-referral, which happens when a student visits our career centers, our website, our Ready to Work YouTube channel, or contacts their assigned job developer. Students can also be referred by a faculty member or counselor, and it is usually when a student is near or at the completion of their training. Students are looking for a necessity job to help support them while they remain focused on their educational goals, or the student needs work readiness skills, which includes resume, interviewing, and job search support. Excuse me. The 3rd way students may refer to the Career and College Transitions Department is through activities such as our bi-weekly work readiness workshops, employer spotlights, in-classroom presentations and marketing, career fairs, or again through our Career and College Transitions website. In the places where you see an asterisk, these are places in which our team collects data that can be used to support career and college transition efforts in various avenues. Some of the types of data that is collected is student identifying information, which includes permission to contact the students beyond the CE doors, additional services the students may need, and like employment placement, etc. This data is housed within the Career and College Transitions Department. The student journey to employment, as I mentioned, is one of in the previous slides, we have centralized the process for employment activities, beginning with the job developers in the student's current pathway as the initial point of contact for assessment. Once a student enters into the process, a job developer will assess the level of need for services related to employment. If a student is ready for employment, the job developer will assist with basic resume development, basic job readiness, and job search. If a student needs a higher level of service, such as work readiness skills, more complex resume development, mock interviewing practice, transferable skill analysis, or if the student has barriers to employment, then the student is referred to the job placement case manager. If a student is unsure of their career pathway and needs more time for career exploration, the student is then referred to the career counselor. And finally, if found that the student is not ready for employment in their current career pathway, the job developer or job placement case manager will meet with the student and the faculty member for that pathway to discuss further training. For each step of our process, data is collected with forms that have been created by our team that allow us to streamline the process and to track data. All our data is tracked and collected on an Excel spreadsheet and includes student data such as name, student ID, contact information, program, expected completion, and dates of completed milestones such as resume developed, work readiness workshop attendance, interview dates, employment referrals, and job placement dates. Contact with our students is through email, phone calls, and Zoom appointments in our current remote environment. So our employer outreach, when we began this process a couple of years ago, we understood that there was already existing employer relationships within our institution. We also realized that there was a tremendous opportunity to build new employer relationships and partnerships to further expand the employment opportunities for our students. With great care was taken during the first year to assess and build collaborative partnerships with the faculty, which was built on trust and mutual respect that allowed us to foster existing relationships with employers and also to put into place a set of processes for building new contacts. As a result, we've been able to identify a multitude of ways of building new employer partnerships, which include working with regional directors, Burning Glass reports, Indeed, and other employment sites, and also working with San Diego Workforce Partnership and other community-based organizations. There are 2 ways that employer contact is made. The employer either reaches out to the college for employment needs, or the Career and College Transition team reaches out to the employer. In both avenues, we engage the employer, assess their needs, and the level of desired engagement that is needed. We work with the employers to create an avenue for job placement, work-based learning, industry advisory board involvement, career fair and employer spotlight attendance, or any other service that leads to students being hired by the employer. We ensure that in every employer conversation, we discuss how we can partner and work together. As with all our other processes, we collect data on the employer in an Excel database that includes information about the employer, current job openings, future job openings, and their desired level of engagement with the institution. In alignment with the guiding principles, we have created processes that minimize the burden on employers. We have centralized processes for employer contacts, which has resulted in an easy and consistent process for employers. One example is how we streamlined this process was prior to putting these processes in place, employers could contact any of our 7 campuses and might be directed to a dean, faculty, member, counselor, or other person who may or may not be able to assist their needs. In our new process, when an employer calls, they are directed to Career and College Transitions Department for the initial engagement, and we determine the level of service required and requested. This process allows us to include conversations and coordination with other departments and individuals so that we can provide comprehensive wraparound employer support. We have also implemented the guiding principles of having a single point of contact between the regional directors and the institution, which is me, the job placement case manager. The process mapping and implementation of the process has helped us streamline our services, and we have seen many successes and also challenges, which we will discuss in the next slide. So some of the successes we've had are increased collaboration among the departments and divisions within our institution, non-paid internships on the job training and job shadowing. We've created stronger partnerships between work-based learning coordinators, which is on the instructional service side, and career and college transitions, which is on the student service side. We've provided more employment opportunities to students. We've increased employer opportunities through spotlights, hiring events, partnerships, and industry advisory boards. Some of the challenges that we've experienced are we don't have a technology system. We don't have College Central Network or any type of CRM. So this has made a challenge for us. In addition, we've also been building out our website presence for work-based learning, and we're still developing our YouTube channel and our Career and College Transitions website. We also have non-credit, which we're not able to offer work experience courses, so that has put a challenge for us within internships and other work-based learning opportunities, and our enrollment and retention versus career placement challenge. Next slide, Richard. So these are still in development, but our Career and College Transition website is up and running. And we also have a YouTube channel, which we put together when we first went into a remote environment that provides a place where students can view our workshops that have been pre-recorded. And this is still in development. And I know there are other resources that we are currently working on. And that is the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening.
Awesome. Thank you to the continuing education team. We appreciate it. Any questions for the presenters? Well, if they don't have questions, you guys know that I have questions. So I had a couple of questions that I jotted down. My first question was for you, Deborah. I was curious that your role is unique, right? So we haven't really heard this. I'm sure there are some work-based learning coordinators who are helping with certain aspects, but the fact that your position is devoted to industry advisory boards was pretty interesting. I was curious, do you find most of your work is like in recruiting employers to participate with the panel, or helping faculty to understand how to make it more effective? Like where do you spend your time?
So where does the majority of my time get spent right now? It's primarily working with the programs and the deans to identify opportunities and ways to maybe improve or enhance the agendas, the topics, the representation on the industry advisory boards, for example, the number of industry participants versus faculty or other, how we engage industry when they come to the table. I think that's probably, so it's a lot of strategic planning. When it comes to the recruitment of employers, I'm not directly reaching out to employers per se. There's still some, honestly, probably some work that can be done there, but there's multiple paths for that outreach. What I can do is I can be able to help identify who's hiring. The use of Burning Glass for these labor insights reporting, we can do queries based on the occupation, and we can identify the top 50 employers in San Diego that have been hiring for this particular role in the last 12 months, which can be a great value to our programs.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you. We've all experienced great industry advisory boards and not so great industry advisory boards. We've heard from so many of the colleges and so many of the people in this group of, just asking questions about how do we improve them and so forth. And so it's a very interesting idea. I hear your, the reason behind it. I've popped into them before, and there's way more educators than employers, right? And all of us talk a lot, especially when it's not on Zoom. And so we tend to hear more from faculty and from our college reps than we do from industry. There's just so many things. And so it sounds like wonderful work. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
I just want to tap in here. One of the strategies that Deb has done, which I really want to just talk about, is bringing questions into the room. Because as you just said, Kevin, it's really our nature as faculty to start talking and to forget that the purpose is to listen. And when Deb brought questions into the room, that changed the conversation. Because Deb, why don't you talk about what happened when you brought the questions into the room?
Thanks, Richard. It really shifted the entire dynamic. In other words, specific questions that any of us can ask in an industry advisory board would be looking at these skill sets. Which ones do you agree that they are, which ones are the most important for you? Would you hire students with based on the curriculum that you've seen in the curriculum outline? Those are huge, because they're not there to tell us as faculty how to teach it, but they can actually really stimulate the conversation around, yes, this is exactly what we're looking for. This is exactly what they need. Or if you just pivot it just a little bit, it would make the students even more marketable.
That's great. It actually sounds very familiar or similar to what the process that the regional directors and the centers of excellence have been using when we create our small focus groups to dig deeper into our research and the things that we're hearing from employers. And so we're using very similar questions, right? So looking at these knowledge, skills, and abilities, would you hire students if they came to you with these skills, right? And it's been very meaningful. It definitely changes the discussion, right? It allows you to get beyond those surface level KSAs that everybody brings up, right? Like, oh, we want people with more Microsoft skills. Like, okay, well, we all know that, right? But let's get into like the harder things that we can focus on. We're actually, a shameless plug, Rushan and Tina and I are doing a breakout session tomorrow at CCC AOE around the process for developing those panels and the research that we do. I had one more quick question. Clark, I loved the idea or what you shared about how employers are now for your college funneled to like a single point, right? And I imagine that was a very heavy lift, right? I was curious what steps you guys had to do for that to actually work or to take place.
It was a heavy lift because, we talked about how we have 7 campuses. So, and we still have issues. We've tried to centralize it where the people who are answering the phone, student services, or people who would answer the main line know that if it's an employer calling with anything regarding employment or wanting to partner with the organization, that then they immediately go to the Career and College Transitions Department. And before it was just kind of like whoever the person thought might could help them, the dean or, a counselor or a faculty, or they'd send it to the program chair. It just kind of went everywhere. And so that's why it's really been helpful. It's taken time. It's taken about a year to get everyone on the same page, but it's made a tremendous difference. Noticed we've even had employers who've come back and said, I stopped coming because I would get transferred to so many people I never knew who I was talking to. So now they have one central location to go to, and then we can coordinate with other people within the institution that can help them. So it is a heavy lift. We still have the issue of like being in a remote environment. The campus has set up individual email addresses that people can email. And so one employer will email all 7 campuses, And then all 7 of the people that are answering those emails email us. And so we get 7 responses. So we're still working through some of the process and testing the processes. So, we still have challenges with it, but it's definitely a lot better than it was.
I love that you guys are starting on a process though, right? Like phone tree work can be awful, right? To understand where people go and where they need to be routed and so forth. But from an employer perspective, it's very frustrating. I mean, think of us as consumers, right? Like if you call a store and you get bounced around from department to department, we get frustrated and we often hang up, right? And so for an employer, I know for all of us who work with employers, it's like our nightmare that might happen to one of them before they come to us, right? And so I think it's a very smart idea to figure out how you can funnel those to make sure that employers are receiving like a consistent response and an appropriate tiered response to their inquiries. It sounds great.
And it's that one stop, that one call where the people in career and college transitions, we start that engagement, and then we talk about what all services are available, what level of engagement. It's not just the job placement, but it's, are you interested in classroom presentations and work-based learning, and do you have internships, and would you like to serve on an industry advisory board? And we talk about all the services, at that initial call, and then we can coordinate with whoever needs to help support that wraparound service for the employer.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
And if I can interject too, I think what the 3 of us are also talking about too is the transformation, the change management that needs to be also considered when we're introducing these opportunities, looking at how Richard is working with faculty and partnering with faculty to bring, more options for work-based learning opportunities into the classroom. There's just a whole component of this that, I don't know if the rest of the schools colleges have gone through this, but we're definitely having to step through this and make sure that we're continuing to have it be like a seamless process for our students, even though we are in different parts of the organization.
I'm going to tap in on this, which is that we've had a culture change, and it's such a major culture change. A decade ago, all people talked about in non-credit was life skills, helping students life skills. Now we're talking maybe similar stuff, but now it's contextualized. So when we talk about math or English in a work-based learning environment, it's how can we support the student in their specific career pathway with math or English? How can we, as Deb will explain, use soft skills to support the students? Because it's not enough if they have hard skills. And faculty need to be reminded, it's not enough that the student can use a wrench if they don't know how to ask for a wrench. It's not enough if they work in a group if they don't know how to interact and thank a group member and how to problem solve. And this is such a game changer because it just wasn't in the classroom.
And that was absolutely reinforced by a recent industry advisory board meeting that we attended, where, looking at these skills, these baseline skills in some of these reports. I don't know if the rest of you are using Labor Insights or whatever media, reporting format you're using to get some of this data, but these softer or essential skills are across the board: teamwork and collaboration, organizational skills. Well, we were able to facilitate the dialogue of, what does this mean? How do you know? And as an employer, what is an example, so that, Richard can take that back to, the faculty and say, these are also inputs for you as ways to be able to enrich the experience. So that's that feedback loop we're really trying to drive as part of the process.
Thank you so much. I know one of the interesting things too is to turn that question on employers and say, well, how do you want those skills demonstrated so right, that these students have these experiences and these skills because they've been trained on it. And we found that sometimes it's very difficult for employers to articulate that also. And so giving them the opportunity to talk through some of these things, I believe, supports our students in the long run because they start looking for them.